I want to address all the people who are complaining about getting cold calls on LinkedIn. Now, they're usually senior leaders, so I imagine they're getting hit up a lot. Sometimes they're even in sales or marketing, which is kind of funny to me. Anyway, I want to say you guys are totally right. I agree getting cold calls sucks. 99% of cold callers are terrible and should get a different job. There's a few reasons, though, that most cold callers are providing bad experiences for the people that they're calling, right? They're not providing any value. They have no insider knowledge that would make talking to them worthwhile outside of a buying conversation. If you want to grab people's attention, you need to have something to say other than buy my shit. So most SDR orgs do not have frameworks around follow-ups, nothing programmed in Salesforce or their CRM that provides a programmatic series of actions around these follow-ups. They're mostly like throwing reminders on their calendars to call someone back in 6 months without much context. I think some of this could be automated with a tool. I just haven't seen one that does this yet. There probably is. Tag them in the comments, I guess. And when you think about the follow-up, right, most of the people who spend money with you are not the people who you hard closed on a meeting on the very first call. Like, there was more touch points between the time that they booked a meeting and the time that they purchased, and maybe they said no a couple times, right, before they agreed to a meeting, and they probably said no a couple more times before they spent any money. Next thing, most companies have shit for qualification criteria. They say that if the prospect is breathing, they're qualified, and all I'm going to say about this is that VP of sales at a Series A through C startup is not an ICP. If that's what you're working with, I would recommend you go home and take a look at your life. And last thing, maybe the most important thing, is that the compensation model for SDRs really doesn't make sense, especially when you consider the downstream effects of the things that I just mentioned, right? If you can't qualify people, if you can't follow up with them, and you also don't know shit about your industry, and we're paying SDRs hundreds of dollars for a SAT meeting, then we are way out of whack on alignment between buyers and sellers. So we're not doing our buyers a service because we're spraying and praying, annoying them and hoping to get lucky, maybe land a meeting with somebody who might be qualified. And the sales orgs really aren't getting what they want either, because they get a bunch of shitty meetings with people who aren't buying anything. So what's the solution? I'm not going to claim to have all the answers here, but the first thing I think is that the SDRs need to be able to be subject matter experts so that they can shoot the shit with their prospects and, more importantly, actually understand what they go through on a day-to-day basis. A lot of people will say, oh, product knowledge isn't important. Product knowledge may not be important. Prospect knowledge is very important. If you don't know anything about the people that you're selling to, then I don't know what to tell you, dude. Go to a professional guild meeting, whoever your buyers are, go to where they hang out and learn about them. As far as follow-ups go, I'm going to give you a really good script for this, right? Hey, when you're evaluating vendors for this process, based on our conversation, you would probably benefit from comparing us to what you're doing now. When is a better time for me to follow up with you? Or could we put a tentative meeting on the calendar 6 months or a year from now? And if they say yes, follow up with me then follow up with them then. Don't try to force a meeting right now. For the qualification piece, you need to narrow down your ICP. Now you're probably thinking, oh yeah, well my ICP is already pretty narrow, but I can tell you that you still need to narrow it down. If you think it's narrow enough, narrow it down some more. And what I want you to do is go all in on that niche that you're actually having success booking meetings with, and quit trying to figure everything else out. Quit trying to figure out what 10 titles you can sell to. Just focus on one or two, and quit living in the fantasy world where everyone should buy your product, because if you think everyone should buy your product, then you need to get a different job. And lastly, the compensation model for SDRs, it's really the most interesting piece of this, and it's not something I really thought about until recently. And I don't have all the answers here either. I'm not even going to give you an original thought here, right? But I will echo a couple of people who I've read a lot from. First one's Emmanuel Carpenter, and the second being the guys over at PRLs. But so Emmanuel said that the SDRs should be under marketing, which I don't agree with that, but his rationale was that SDRs need to be not just trying to shove meetings down people's throats, but instead raising awareness through direct phone marketing, aka telemarketing, and they should get a high base salary with minimal commission based mostly on activity. Now, to me, that almost does seem more in alignment with what buyers want, with what sales orgs want, and kind of what the SDRs want too, because we're really just optimizing for conversations and not just meetings. And we're optimizing for introductions and starting some kind of relationship instead of just, oh, we need to find people who need to buy stuff right now. And as an aside, that's sort of a product of the VC-backed hypergrowth economic models that most software companies are built on. So it's kind of baked into the system. And what he was proposing is almost a little bit more old school, more legacy industry type of SDR work. The PRL guys had a similar idea about paying for completed pitches, activations, and programmatic follow-ups, so they'd comp people for giving the AEs something to follow up on. The rationale being that you never want to let your SDR qualify or disqualify something for you without having an actual pro talk to the customer. So like when I was working at PandaDoc, I would pass stuff off to Josh Gillespie, and often I'd say something like, I don't know if this is qualified. And he'd be like, listen, don't worry about that. You just set the meeting. Thank you. We'll find out together. And I think that system actually reinforces the fundamentals of a good opener and getting the pitch down, and rather than just an emphasis on like begging people to like come meet with you. I guess what I'm saying with all this is if we put things like this into practice, we're going to create a world where people are not afraid of picking up the phone, either to dial or to answer it, because they know that on the other end, there's going to be some kind of value there, and not just somebody asking you for something. And if we have a compelling reason to reach out and aren't trying too hard to close them on a meeting right then and there, we're going to be in a place where buyers and sellers are much more aligned. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts about this. Would love to hear them in the comments. Peace.